Hello, you nine, and welcome to week 4 now of your science lessons. We are going to be picking up from last week, where we were looking at tissues and organs. And today we're going to be focusing on the human digestive system. So, I will include this link on the Show My Homework description of this lesson. It's just a little video to watch, just to introduce you to what we're going to be doing about, which is the human digestive system. Okay, so what I'd like you to do now, very, very quickly, you don't have to write them down. From what you remember of previous lessons, can you put these different levels of organisation into the correct order, starting from the smallest? You might want to pause the video to give you time to do that. Okay, so hopefully we got this answer. So organelles, they are the smallest, they are the small structures, subcellular structures that you find inside a cell, like the nucleus and the mitochondria and ribosomes. Next level up is the cell itself, so just a cell. We've looked at different types of cells, specialized cells, things like that. The next level up, which we started looking at in last week's lesson, but also you would have done it at Key Stage 3, is tissues. So that is similar cells coming together to perform a function. The next level will be organs. This is where you have different tissues coming together to form a function. And then finally organ systems, where you have different organs performing a function. Okay, so we need to be able to understand the role of the organs in the digestive system. So at the lower levels of the success criteria, we need to be able to identify the different parts of the digestive systems and the different organs that are involved. 5 and 6, we can say what each of those organs does, and also the general kind of process that is digestion. And then for the top levels, we need to be able to link the process of digestion to explain its function, and also how the small intestine is adapted for it. Okay, so hopefully none of you are going to be too grossed out. There is a couple of videos as well that some people might find a little bit too graphic or too disgusting. So if you do feel that, then obviously stop the video and move on to the next bit. So we've got some pictures here and some animations of different parts of the digestive system. Can you go through each one and see whether you recognize what part of the digestive system that is? Okay, you might want to pause the video and have a go at that. Okay, so let's see what parts they are. First of all, on the top left, we've got the liver, the body's second largest organ, very large organ, is involved in digestion. The middle on the top row is the stomach, so that hole that is closing, that is the sphincter of the stomach. On the top right-hand side, we've got food in the esophagus. So you might have done that as the food pipe or the gullet, but it is the esophagus. The bottom left one is actually a picture of the structures on a tongue. The middle one are taste buds, so that is involved with being able to taste our food. And on the bottom right, we've actually got the large intestine, which again is one of the two different types of intestine that are going to be part of the digestive system. Okay, so here is a general scientific diagram of a body, and the organs that is showing are to do with the digestive system. Can you have a go at identifying as many, you don't need to write it down, as many different organs as you can from this picture? Now, we're going to be adding to this picture as we go. So I would suggest either drawing a rough outline of this picture or going on Google Images or even print screen this just to get a picture that you can use in your book and add annotations to. Okay. So before we go over some of the answers, we also need to know what the process of digestion is, and that's going to be on the next slide. You do not need to add these organs onto your picture that I'm about to go through. We can do that as we go through the lesson. So some of the organs you might have been able to identify, or not just organs, we've got some areas as well. You've got the tongue and the mouth at the top, or which are inside the oral cavity. Those yellow structures you can see towards the top are going to be the glands. Going from the mouth down to the stomach, you've got the esophagus. That large sort of triangular shaped reddish organ is the liver. There is a blue tube coming off that. And you've got a little green structure, that is the gallbladder, we'll talk about that. Behind the stomach you can see the pancreas. The green intestine is the large intestine and the orange one is the small intestine. And then the blue at the bottom we have the rectum going into the anus. Okay, so digestive system. This, after I've gone through this, you will want to pause the video and make note of this. So the digestive systems of humans and other mammals, they exchange substances with the environment. But what is digestion? And why do we need to digest our food? Well, digestion, the scientific definition for digestion, which you do need to know for the exam, is the breakdown of large insoluble food molecules into small soluble food molecules. Now remember, insoluble means that it does not dissolve. So we've got large molecules that don't dissolve in water, and we're breaking them down into small ones that do dissolve. Why do we need to digest our food? So that they can be absorbed into the bloodstream for our bodies to use. So there's lots of different parts to our food, and we use different parts of that food for different things. Oh, sorry about that. Okay, so quick check of what you remember from Key Stage 3. So we've got 8 questions here that are things that you may have covered at Key Stage 3. You do not need to write them down. It's just whether you did know it or whether you didn't know it. So question number 1 is name the organ that removes water from undigested food. So which part of the digestive system does that? Number 2, name the organ that absorbs the food into the bloodstream. Number 3, name the organ that squeezes the food by peristalsis. Number 4, name the organ that churns the food and contains acid. Number 5, name the fluid that aids swallowing of food. Number 6, name the organ that stores the feces. Number 7, name the organ that connects the mouth to the stomach. And number 8, name the scientific term for removing undigested waste. So if you want to pause the video and just make sure that you have an answer for all of those, that would be great. We'll all go through the answers. You might want to pause and take note of any that you did not know, because all of these are covered in Key Stage 3. So question number 1, name the organ that removes water from undigested food. That is the large intestine. Number 2, the organ that absorbs the food into the bloodstream is the small intestine. Number 3, name the organ that squeezes the food by peristalsis. That is the oesophagus or the gullet. Number 4, name the organ that churns the food and contains acid. Hopefully you knew that was the stomach. Number 5, name the fluid that aids swallowing of food, the saliva. Number 6, the name of the organ that stores feces is rectum. Number 7, the organ that connects the mouth to the stomach is esophagus again, or gullet. Number 8, name the scientific term for removing undigested waste. It is egestion. Egestion. And those are the words if you're unsure about the spelling. Okay, so I'm going to add the links to the next 2 videos again on the Show My Homework description of today's lesson. There are 2 videos to have a look at. You don't need to take any notes on them. It's just about watching the videos. I will warn you that some of you might find it a little bit gross, but it is really, really interesting. So if you go to the Show Homework, you'll see that there are 2 video links for the digestive system. If you go through both of those, it's really interesting videos just about what actually happens in the digestive system. So you might want to pause this video or come off this YouTube video, go to Show My Homework, watch those videos, then come back to this. Okay, now I said you might want to have printed out the organs of the digestive system or just done a basic drawing in your book. If you'd rather just do it as each organ as we go through, note form, that's absolutely fine. But we are going to go through the different parts of the digestive system that you need to know, and you need to know the function as well. So you do not need to copy what is going to be on these slides. I suggest listening to what I say about them and then giving a sentence, 2 maximum, about what the function of that organ is. Okay, so we'll begin. We're going to start off with the salivary glands. Now, salivary glands are, as the name suggests, organs that produce saliva. And saliva itself contains enzymes. Now, the specific enzyme it contains is amylase. You don't need to know that at this point, but later on in this week, we're going to be looking at specific enzymes, and you're going to come across that word. And that actually starts breaking down your food. It actually breaks down starch. So bread and rice and pasta, things like that contain a lot of starch. It starts breaking that down into glucose. The saliva is also really important because it lubricates our mouths and the food that make it easier to swallow. I don't know if any of you ever tried eating crackers really quickly. When it dries out your mouth, it makes it a lot harder to swallow. So if you want to pause the video now, pop salivary glands and then just a sentence about what the salivary glands do. Okay, next one, we've got the esophagus. Now, I prefer the term esophagus, but you might also see it as gullet. If you're watching any American programs, you'll see the O is missing, but we do include the O in the English spelling of it. And it is basically the tube that goes from the mouth to the stomach. But it's not simply a tube, like the windpipe or something like that. It's actually very, very special because it's got muscles that go around in the wall and they actually squeeze the food down. So that's why if you eat a meal, go upside down, all the food doesn't just fall out of your mouth. It's actually pushed down the esophagus by muscular contractions. And you can see that in the animation on the top on the right hand side where you have the bolus, which is the ball of food that you've swallowed, being pushed down the esophagus. At the entrance to the stomach, there is a ring of muscle called a sphincter. So you can see this in the animation on the right-hand side at the bottom. So once the food has gone through, the sphincter will actually close, blocking off the esophagus from the stomach. So most of the time it's closed, but it will relax when food comes near it, so that it's able to go into the stomach. It takes around 10 seconds for food to travel from the mouth to the stomach. It's your interesting fact for the day. So if you'd like to pause the video, we've got esophagus and just a sentence or two about the esophagus. The peristalsis is important. Sphincter is not part of the specification, so if you want to focus on peristalsis, that is more important. Okay, next up, we've obviously got the stomach, and the stomach plays a very important role in digestion, as do all of the organs. But the stomach is a muscular organ found on the left side of the upper abdomen. Now, we looked at this in a little bit more detail in the last lesson because we were specifically looking at the stomach for the organs. And you'll see, I'm sure you remember that it's got lots of different layers. You've got the muscle which helps churning up the food. You've got the layer that produces the hydrochloric acids and any of the enzymes, and then you've got the epithelial layers as well. So the stomach secretes acid and enzymes that digest food. You've got ridges of muscle tissue that make up the lining of the stomach, so that enables it to contract and churn up the food. The stomach muscles regularly contract, churning up the food, just as I said, to help digestion. And then you've got a valve known as a pyloric sphincter. You don't need to know that term, that opens to allow the food to pass into the small intestine. So you can see from the animations on the bottom left-hand side, we've got the churning action of the stomach, where you've got the acid being added into it, and then the contractions of that food, of the stomach to mix up with the food. And it takes about 2 to 4 hours in the stomach before it moves on to the small intestine. The rather gross one in the middle is showing the food passing through the sphincter, closes off, and into the stomach, where it's churned there for about 2 to 4 hours. So if you'd like to pause the video, what is important from this is about the contraction of the muscular walls, and then it produces acids and enzymes. Okay, next up. Now, this is more information than what you actually need, so do not panic about that. But we're going to the small intestine. Now, the small intestine is incredibly important because this is where most of the food is actually absorbed. So the small intestine is a winding, tightly folded tube of about 6 meters long in adults. So it's actually the longer of the two types of intestine, but why it's called the small intestine is because it's a lot thinner. It's got a smaller diameter of the tube, which means that you can fold it more often. It connects to the stomach on the top end and to the large intestine, or the colon, at the bottom end. So it's a tube that goes between the stomach and the large intestine. Most of the food a person consumes is digested and absorbed in the small intestine. The lining of the small intestine has tiny finger-shaped tissues called villi. These raised tissues greatly increase the surface area. And you can see on the right-hand side of the screen, in the top picture, what kind of looks like brushes, those are actually villi. So the villi will line the small intestine, and as said in the last lesson, very important because it increases surface area. So please pause the video now. Important things from this is where that the small intestine is where food is digested and absorbed, and also mentioning about the villi in the lining to increase surface area. Okay, next up, we've got the liver and the pancreas. Now, these do not come up really, key stage 3, so these will be new to most of you. We'll start off with the liver. Now, you don't need to worry too much that there's 2 sections to the liver. You need to know that there is a liver, and that liver filters blood, but it also makes a substance called bile. It secretes bile, and it's the bile that ends up in the digestive system. So it secretes this substance called bile. That bile is actually stored in something called a gallbladder. Now, some people have their gallbladders removed because it might make bile stones and things like that build up in the gallbladder, which means you have to have it removed. And those people will know that, I'm sure, that it is to do with fat digestion. So the liver makes this bile, secretes this bile that is stored in the gallbladder. The other organ, which is kind of separate but has a role to play in the digestive system, is the pancreas. Now, the pancreas does loads of important functions. It makes hormones, some different hormones, insulin and glucagon, which are to do with blood sugar levels, but it also produces pancreatic juice. Now, that pancreatic juice contains digestive enzymes, and they are really important because they are what take the larger molecules like starch and break it down into smaller soluble ones such as glucose. So it's the pancreas. Well, pancreas is one of the places where these enzymes are made, and it makes these enzymes and it secretes them into the small intestine. And those enzymes break down carbohydrates, such as starch, proteins, and lipids. Now, lipids are the scientific term for fats. So that's all of the oils, all of the hard fats as well, so cheese, butter, lard, and things like that. So if you'd like to pause the video now and pop down about the liver and the pancreas, again, just a sentence is sufficient. The important thing with the liver is that it produces bile. It doesn't say on the slideshow, but it is important that you say that that is stored in the gallbladder, which is Gall, and then bladder. And on the right-hand side, the pancreas produces these pancreatic juices, which contain enzymes. Okay, so moving on. We've spoken about the small intestine, so this one is the large intestine. The large intestine is sometimes referred to as the bowel or the colon. So if you're having problems with your bowels, it's normally to do with this one. Now, the large intestine is very important because it actually absorbs the water. So water is absorbed here from the undigested substances, the undigested food, and that's really important because if we don't reabsorb that water, take that water out, then we will dehydrate. If you have ever had diarrhea in your life, which most of you I'm sure have, this is where the food is pushed too quickly through the large intestine so that water isn't taken out. And dehydration is one of the big killers in the world. So a lot of people do get diarrhea and then will eventually succumb to dehydration. That's because you're not taking that water out. Now, once the water's been removed, you end up with that familiar kind of feces material. And feces is stored in the rectum. So feces is the scientific term for poo, basically. So once that's been made, it's stored in the rectum. So it can stay there until you need to get rid of it, where obviously it will then pass through the anus before being removed by defecation. So you might see, it's not very common on the exam boards, the term defecation, but that just means defecating. So getting rid of that feces, pooing. Also referred to as egestion. Okay, so egestion, you've got ingestion, digestion, egestion. Egestion is getting rid of it. Okay, so going back to your diagram, we are going to add some different bits to it that we haven't already added. So you can either add to stuff that you've already got there, or you can just leave what is about to come up on here, just in case. Print /save slide 26. That is for my reference. Obviously, I can't print it out for all of you guys, which I would normally do, because you're not here. So on your diagram that you have, or if you've just done it in note form, then you can just say where. Can you label where each of these happens? So where in that digestive system does ingestion happen, absorption, egestion, and digestion? So this is just getting your head around those words. You can pause the video and add those in. Okay, next up, can you make sure that you have a clear label of where the small intestine is? So that is the long, thinner tube that is orange in the middle of the green tube on this slide. Where the large intestine is, so that is that green structure that goes around the small intestine. Where the stomach is, so that is the orange structure that comes down from the esophagus. The mouth is, I'm sure you can work that out. The gullet or the esophagus, so that's the tube going from the mouth to the stomach. And where the rectum is, so that is the blue bit right at the bottom. Okay, can you make sure that you have got something about the function of each part of the digestive system that you have labelled? So if you didn't get something down, or would like something that's a bit more simplified, then you can use these. There's a couple on here though that we didn't go over that you can add on as well. So where is it where food is chopped up to give it a big surface area? So where do you think food is chopped up to give it a big surface area? Which structure pushes the food to the stomach through a process called peristalsis? Which part of the digestive system absorbs water into the blood? Which part of the digestive system pushes undigested food from the body? And which part uses acid and enzymes to help break down food? Okay, now the last thing that I'd like you to have a go at is adding these labels. So where is the appendix? Where do you think the appendix is? You do not need to know that for the exam, but it is quite interesting because quite a few people have their appendix removed. Where is the liver in the diagram? Where is the anus? Where is the pancreas, the gallbladder, and salivary glands? So pause the video, have a go at adding it all on, and then we'll go over the answer. Okay, so we start from the labelling where. Ingestion, that's going to be happening in the mouth. Absorption, that's going to be happening in the small intestine and the large intestine. Egestion, so that's getting rid of it, that is in the rectum. And digestion is pretty much everything. Hopefully you got the labels in. I did go over where you'll find each of those. The challenge though labels, the appendix is the little green structure that comes off the large intestine. So where the small intestine and large intestine join together, you can see that there's a green bit that goes down. It's towards the bottom of the diagram. The green bit that goes down, that's actually the appendix. The liver, we've already said, is that red organ. The anus is right at the end, so at the very, very bottom of the diagram is another sphincter muscle that will open and close. The next one is the pancreas. That is that lighter green structure behind the stomach. The gallbladder, which is that structure on the liver that's kind of green, but it's attached to a blue tube. And the salivary glands are the yellow structures towards the mouth. Very hard to try and describe where these different parts are. If you have no idea what I'm talking about, if you go onto Google Images, you'll be able to find all of these much more clearly labelled, I'm sure, than my descriptions. Okay, so the functions part, hopefully we've got chops up the food to give it a big surface area. That's going to be the mouth. Pushes food to the stomach, that's going to be the oesophagus or the gullet. Absorbs water into the blood, that is the large intestine. Absorbs digestive food into the blood, that's the small intestine. Pushes undigested food from the body, that's going to be the rectum. And uses acid and enzymes to break down food, that is the stomach. Okay. Now, this cropped up in previous lessons when we were doing diffusion, but also in last lesson. We've got a close-up look, a cross-section through a small intestine. And you can see those structures that we spoke about called villi there. Why is it important that digestion of large nutrients has taken place by the time the food reaches the small intestine? That is a challenge question there. At the top, completely didn't read this bit, but at the top, how is the small intestine adapted to allow lots of food to be absorbed? So, what I'd like you to do is pause the video and can you have a go? You don't have to write it down. Can you have a go at coming up with an answer for how the small intestine is adapted to allow lots of food to be absorbed? And the clue is in the picture. So try and get as many of those sort of keywords that we've spoken about into your answer. And then if you can, have a go at the green question, the extra challenge question. Okay, can you pause the video now? Okay, so how is the small intestine adapted? Well, you can see from the picture, and as I said to you in last week's lessons, when in doubt, surface area for biology. So these villi structures increase the surface area. You can see it's got a really good blood supply, so that's taking those nutrients away, which keeps that concentration gradient. You could even go as far as to say, but that would be very high level. You might have also said there's a very short diffusion pathway or short distance for the nutrients to diffuse. Why is it important that, for the extra challenge question, why is it important that digestion of large nutrients has taken place by the time the food reaches small intestine? That's just so that it's able to diffuse across or move across into the villi. Okay. Oh, there was another question. Why is it important to have lots of villi in the small intestine, increasing this area? Right, now these 4 adaptations of the villi are very important. So I'm afraid you are going to have to write those 4 down, perhaps next to a little diagram of a villi or a printed one if you have access to a printer. What the villi offer is, apart from just creating a very large surface area, as I said, they've got a really good blood supply. So there are tiny capillaries that are running through all of these villi. They're taking those nutrients away, so they don't build up in one place, otherwise you'll decrease the concentration gradient. They've got very, very thin walls. It's not a cell, so it's not talking about cell walls, it's talking about the structure, and it's a very short distance that those nutrients need to diffuse. If you look at the bottom, we've got some nice pictures showing villi. So you've got the one on the left that is actually a picture from the intestine, so you can see those villi structures, quite creepy. The middle one is a microscope slide that's been taken, and on the right hand side it says, because of the villi, your small intestine has the same surface area as a tennis court. I do believe that somebody actually worked this out, and it's not as big as a tennis court. Was that the lungs? No, I'm thinking of the lungs. It is the tennis court for the villi. Ignore me. Okay, last task, and you've done incredibly well. There's a lot of information on there. Last task, and shockingly, it is a 6-marker task. Can you have a go at answering this question? Describe the organs of the digestive system and their roles. So try not to have a look back at your notes when you first have a go at this. If you want to then go back after you've put everything that you remember and then add to it, that's absolutely fine. I'm not expecting it to take you 15 minutes to do. If you could pause the video and take however long you need. Okay, so we're going to go over some of the answers that you might have put down, and each one of these is going to be worth a mark. So grab a different coloured pen if you have access to one, or just a pencil, and look over the answers. So you might have said that the salivary glands release enzymes, or you might have said the salivary glands release saliva to make it easier to swallow. Either one of those, talking about what's happening in the mouth, would be worth a mark. If you said that the mouth breaks down food to give it a larger surface area, that also would be a separate mark. You might have then said the food passes to the stomach down the oesophagus or the gullet. That would be a mark. And I would actually say that the churning up with the stomach acid would be a separate mark. So if you talked about the muscular walls of the stomach, allow it to be churned up, then that would be great. I would say that's another mark. Then if you talked about in the small intestine, nutrients are absorbed, that would be a mark. If you say the pancreas releases digestive juices into the small intestine, or you could say the pancreas releases enzymes into the small intestine, that would be a mark. If you said the gallbladder releases bile or stores bile, which is to do with fat digestion, then that would be a mark. If you said that water is absorbed in the large intestine, that can be worth a mark. And waste passes out of the anus as feces. You don't have to say feces on it. Can't say poo though, so either one of those will be fine. Okay, so give yourself a mark out of 6. Hopefully we managed to get 6, because I think the command word is describing. You just have to talk about what each one does. So hopefully it was relatively easy to get several marks out of that. So hopefully we got 6 or near to 6. And that, I'm sure you'll be happy to know, concludes another lesson of science. So hopefully we're now able to identify some different organs in the digestive system. Hopefully you might be able to say what they do, and also what the general sort of definition of digestion is. And hopefully we can also, which I think quite a lot of you should be able to do, just link the process to the adaptations that it has. Okay, take care of yourselves, guys, and you'll be hearing from me tomorrow for the next lesson. Take care. Bye-bye.